When did you first recognize communications or being on the radio or working in radio was a interest of yours?
I think I grew up in children's TV, and I always watched children's TV growing up. And when I thought, okay, I want to be that I want to do this as a living. When I was about 10 years old, it said you've got to apply on the website and you need to do hospital radio. And I went, oh, okay, I don't know what hospital radio is, but fine, okay, that's where people start out. And so I started by doing hospital radio. And I went in there, and it was literally a local hospital down the road from me, and I had hospital wards, and I would go there on a Sunday night, and we would play bingo with the people on the wards, and then we would take their tickets, and on the back, then we'd ask them for a request, and then we went and did a request show afterwards. So we'd get them all to listen in on their headphones, which were connected to their beds. They would then listen in, and then I was like, oh my God, this is magic. So I've literally met this person. I'm now giving them a shout out on the radio. I then get in the car on my way home, and the radio's on. I'm like, I know exactly what they're doing. I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to do radio. And I've always loved learning about people's stories. I think everyone's got a story, and I just want to find out what those stories are.
Awesome. So was there any, so you just got into it? There was no hesitation? There was no thinking of, because so many people have the mindset that you have to have a plan B. You can't reach just in case you don't go. And so was there ever a hesitation, or did you say, this is it, I'm doing this no matter what?
It's all I ever wanted to do. Ever since day one, even after school, I'd walk home. This is a little secret that I'll tell you, Casey. When I walk home from school, I pretend I'm on the TV. So I was like, hello, welcome to the show, coming up today. And I'm literally walking down the street. It's all I've ever known. It's all I've ever wanted to do. And I had a conversation with my mum actually last year about what happens if I never made it. And she was like, well, it's all you ever cared about, and we'd have supported you either way. And it's hard. There have been times that I've been out of work, and there's been times that I'm a freelancer, that I've had no work some days and work other days. And so it's really important to make money. And so I worked in the local hospital in admin. I've done invigilating for school exams. So I've always managed to find little jobs to make little bits of money whilst working towards radio. And if it ever failed and it ever stopped, I'd get a normal job and just carry on trying to work where I can, or doing my podcast, Secure the Insecure, from home with a laptop. So, you know, we've now got those means to an end that as long as you've got money, you can focus on your hobby. This is a hobby to me. I get up every day so excited to go to work. And obviously pre-COVID, that I'm meeting celebrities, or I'm off for a lunch somewhere, or I'm going to watch a new theatre show. I get to do all those experiences, which no one else gets to do. And I'm doing that for work, but it's actually for me. So yeah, I absolutely love what I do, and there's nothing else I would want to do.
What did you have radio experience before your podcast that you're doing now?
Yes, I've worked for a national radio station for coming up to 5 years now. So I started there as an assistant producer, then a producer, and then a celebrity producer, and I'm now the showbiz editor for 2 radio stations.
What was something you learned during that process that you are using now in your own podcast?
The value of listening. When I first started doing interviews and I was on student radio when I was at university, I'd come in with a page document of questions, and it might be 30 questions. And there's no point just going through your 30 questions. Number one, it's going to be far too long. Always try and make interviews about 30 minutes. And secondly, you're not listening. And so I really watched my presenters and saw how their eyes work, saw how they're listening, saw that they might have 3 questions or some bullet points to feed off of. So you're talking about X, Y, Z, and I go, oh, because that happened in that year when this also happened. So it's just always taking that guest on a tangent and just really listening to every single thing that they're saying and not interrupting them, just waiting for that silence, letting it breathe, and then come in and take them on the tangent, because it's all about them and not about you.
I like that. So I like the idea of Secure the Insecure. How was that birth? Because it's an amazing concept. Was that personal for you, or did someone give you that idea? How did you come up with the idea of helping people?
It came originally because, so first, there's 2 parts to this. So I've always loved helping people. I've always loved giving out advice, but I can't take my own advice. But I love learning about people's stories and their journeys and seeing why they are the way they are. We've all got insecurities. And until you know what that insecurity is, you won't know how they tick and how they talk and why they act a certain way. So, for example, if you have a friend that's always annoyed at you and you're like, but I don't understand what I'm doing wrong. Like, to me, I'm not doing anything wrong. And then you go, that's why they're annoyed, or that's why you're annoyed at them. And sometimes it's like, you need to be able to communicate that and say to them, look, I'm upset with you because this is how you are presenting yourself to me, and this is what I'm feeding off you. So that always that, and I've always loved those conversations. And then it was around the time where I was trying to get a mortgage for my flat, and as a freelancer, it's horrific to get a mortgage. And I was feeling a bit down, and I didn't feel like my career was going anywhere. I felt like I was kind of stilted with what I was doing. I'd kind of done everything in my world that I could do in the right time and in the right place. And friendships were here and there, and relationships were here and there. I was just like, there's nothing for me. There's no purpose for me at the moment. I'm not finding anything to do. And so I found that purpose. I spoke to a psychologist about it. And she said, well, why don't you do a podcast? You know all these people. You love speaking. You know how to interview. Why don't you put this all together and do a podcast? And I started that 2 years ago. And I'm now around 70 episodes in. And I've just learned so much, and I've met so many amazing people. And there's people that I've respected who I've grown up watching on TV and listening to on the radio. There's people I've been to school with. There's people I've read their books. There's people I just see as inspiring people on Instagram. I have such a nice range of guests there that tick so many boxes for me and make up different types of my personality.
So for me, when I started my podcast, my first podcast, I had intentions, and those intentions are not what the podcast turned out to be. So when you started yours, what were you thinking or hoping would happen, and what actually did happen as far as the results from starting your podcast?
I think you've got to work on a couple to find your voice, to find the way, why, and how you speak. So, for example, when I started, it was very scripted. My introductions were very scripted. There'd be kind of go-to questions I'd rely on. For example, what would you call this chapter of your life now? And amazing questions that really get people thinking. What really motivates you? What's your biggest insecurity? And over time, I've realised you don't need to rely on those certain questions. People will just talk, and people are free to talk. And giving someone a platform to just speak and go, look, this is for you. This isn't for me. This is for you. This is a podcast or a piece of audio that you can say to your friends when they say, right, I don't really understand you. And you say, well, look, this is the podcast. Have a listen to this. Then you'll understand what I've gone through. You'll understand the way I am. And sometimes it's just sitting back and going, look, the platform is yours. Just speak. Just tell me about your childhood and take me on that journey. And they will do that. And they will tell. Sometimes people will go, I'll go, right, what happened in your childhood? And they'll go straight to, well, and this is how it led to my career. And I'm like, well, hold on. I want to go back to your childhood. Let's try and go through those little traumas that you got through to get to you where you are. And secondly, not everyone wants to talk about their insecurities. They might want to talk about their career. They might want to talk about life. It doesn't necessarily always need to be an insecurity. And I think with that, what that means is it just allows you to all breathe and to let someone come to you rather than you go to them.
What 3 things specifically can you say you gained from your guest that you may use in your own life?
Education. I'm educated every time I speak to a guest, just about the way I look at the world. It might be, for example, gratitude. We've done a lot of episodes recently on gratitude. So looking at being grateful for things and practicing being Zen. It is, for example, how to speak to someone who may have lost someone. I've never lost anyone quite close. I've lost my grandpa about 5 years ago, but on the whole, I've not really lost someone really close to me before. So I've not had to actually properly grieve. So speaking to people like that to see how do you open up those conversations? How do you have those conversations? And then I think just staying alert. You know, it's very easy to kind of get cooped up, especially in the COVID world that we live in this year, that you're in this Groundhog Day, that you're not really going from A to B. And so this keeps you grounded, and it goes, do you know what? It's great. I've had a really nice chat today. I've really enjoyed myself. I've learned something new. I can be really proud of that, rather than always trying to do something, because I'm so hard on myself when it comes to work that sometimes you just need to let it breathe.
On the technical side, were there any challenges in a podcast as far as was Was this your first time doing a podcast? Did you understand how to do it, how to record, how to upload, things of that nature, how to edit? Were there any challenges you found along the way?
Yeah, editing audio I've done for about nearly 10 years actually. So I'm very competent editing audio using Adobe Audition or using Audacity. I've produced 4 podcasts, a reality TV podcast for a presenter in the UK called Jamie East, a celebrity chat show podcast for a guy called Andy J, and a feminist podcast called Badass Women's Hour XL with Harriet Minter. So I've always known how to produce podcasts. This was my first time presenting a podcast, but recording, it was actually fun. I've got a radio industry studio that I use, and I do it down the phone. I think, there's a lot of people who now say Zoom and FaceTime and Skype are so much better than the traditional phone. I used a traditional phone for 4 years. It was absolutely fine. It's more difficult now for people to have proper internet signal that's sustainable than just doing it on the traditional phone.
There are many people who listen to a podcast and think to themselves, I think I can do this. Is there any advice you would give them that they need to know before they even begin?
Just do it. Just do the podcast. And like I said before, you will find your voice when the time is right. It might take you 3 episodes, it might take you 10 episodes, it might take you 30 episodes. The most important thing is just get going. At the end of the day, there's 2 types of people who do podcasts. Those who have got a hobby and a niche ambition, and people who just want to talk because they've got a niche subject that they're really interested in. They want to speak to people who are like-minded. And there's people who do it for a career in radio, and they're doing it as practice. So they're doing it to further their brand. So whatever category you fit into, just do it. It is so fun to do. And also, how often do you get the chance to actually do a project that's personally yours? We all work for someone else. We all work for a company. How often is it that you're actually doing it for you? And that's what a podcast allows you to do. It's all self-sufficient. You do it all yourself. You can record the interviews yourself. You can edit them yourself. You can upload it yourself. You can market it yourself. What you put in is what you get out. So if you shout about your podcast every single minute of the day, it's going to get a much bigger reach than if you do it once a week. And if it comes to your job, how often are you shouting about your job? Probably not a lot. So doing it for your podcast will really give you that chance to kind of take a step back and go, God, I've done 70 episodes. Oh my God, I've done this for 2 years. Like, look how much I've achieved in that time. Look at the types of guests I've had in that time. Look at those conversations I've had in that time. But we never get a chance to do that. So I really encourage anyone to just do a podcast and not to think about the market. Don't think about how many listeners you're getting, because it's not about the listeners, it's about you. And that's also the really important thing as well.
All right. And my last question I have for you, somewhat off the subject, and it doesn't have to be necessarily on your topic that you do on your podcast. It can be any topic. If there was a guest or someone you admired, you would like to have a talk show, a guest you would like to interview, and this guest could be either dead or alive, who would that be and why?
It would have to be Robin Williams, the actor. I think he is an incredible actor. When he did, just so many films. Patch Adams is one of my all-time favourite films. Dead Poets Society, 24-Hour Photo, Mrs. Doubtfire. He was in so many good films as an actor, but also off stage, his mental health and the way he speaks. And if you ever Google Robin Williams quotes, the amount of incredible, inspiring things just really do take a minute to just go, wow, this has actually been lived. And this is someone who can encourage you. I've got quotes all around my flat of him. And yeah, I would just love to have a really deep conversation with him, because actors are showing their acting side and they hide behind characters, and then off stage they're completely different. And unfortunately, we're still not at a level yet where everyone is so open about their mental health. We're getting there, but we're nowhere near as far as we could get yet.